Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar, Omnichannel, Buzzword, or I won't say that word. Today we've got three of us around a campfire, if you like, for an open discussion on how to simplify complexity, avoiding cost mistakes, and unlocking your true omnichannel performance with Shopify, NetSuite, and Celigo. As a introduction, first and foremost, so my name is Rob Scambler. I am the ERP sales. I am the ERP sales director at Catalyst ERP. Actually got NetSuite experience. I was with NetSuite for 5 years as well. Been with the company now for 4.5 years. We have Stephen Saunders. Stephen.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name's Stephen Saunders. I'm the director of ERP here at Catalyst, so kind of professional services director. I bring to the table over 20 years experience in implementing NetSuite.
Cheers. And then I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Partridge today as well.
Hi everybody. Yeah, Dan, CEO of Swanky. I'll introduce Swanky in a moment, but I've been in post for just over 4 years, and prior to that qualified and worked as a corporate lawyer for a number of years.
Oh, I didn't know that, Dan.
Well, there you go. A little bit of
okay, so what we're going to go through today is obviously we've done the intro. We're going to introduce our businesses to you all to show you know who we are. We're going to have a little chat with Dan around the importance of linking up your e-commerce agency with your NetSuite ERP implementation provider. Stephen and I are then going to provide you some real business stories with 3 of our clients and tell you sort of the challenges that they had, what they've implemented, and the outcomes that they saw from that. And then if you have any questions at the end, we can cover those off. Okay, so just to introduce you to Catalyst ERP then. So we are a NetSuite and Celigo partner. We work primarily in the retail wholesale space. We've got roughly around about 50 to 60 NetSuite customers that we've implemented and helped, but we love working in this space. Stephen's team is highly skilled in the integration space, and all based in the UK as well. So that's Catalyst as a very big in a nutshell. Dan, if you want to introduce Swanky very quickly.
Yeah, of course. So Swanky is a Shopify Platinum partner. That's a top tier certified Shopify partner. We have about 65 of us here in the UK and a small team in Australia as well. And we've done about 100 Shopify Plus transformation projects over the last 12 or 14 years. So working on some of the kind of more mature, larger, more complex Shopify implementations in the UK market. And I think in the last probably 24 months or so, a significant majority of our clients are using or considering adopting ERP, many of whom for which it's NetSuite. So, you know, we've become, from our Shopify perspective, very familiar with NetSuite and very comfortable with and acquainted with some of these broader challenges you have in these digital transformation projects where you've got lots of systems, and we'll come on to that in a moment.
Sorry, Dan, I'll fire a question out there to you. So you said that most of the NetSuite, why are people choosing NetSuite over something else, like a Microsoft or something at the moment, do you think?
Yeah, I don't have a definitive answer. I would say the majority of our customers that do have an ERP use NetSuite. Several are also using the different iterations of Microsoft's product range from different legacy eras. But I think NetSuite's fundamentally a good product, and you know we all know it's not an easy thing to implement and set up, and there's complexity to it. But fundamentally, it's serving our sort of mature mid-market customers who are doing, you know, tens and tens of millions of revenue through the business and many millions online, serving them pretty well. So yeah, I think, you know, many customers come to us and they already have NetSuite, or they are being recommended that they investigate NetSuite as their choice of ERP.
Yeah, nice. Okay, thank you. Okay, so what we want to talk about first is really the relationship between an agency like Swanky, who are setting up the Shopify tech stack in the background, and how that links to NetSuite and a company like Catalyst. So let's start at the beginning, Dan. So talk to us about how Swanky sort of approaches commerce transformation projects from the beginning.
So stepping right back, we only work with Shopify. So I'm going to come at this through a kind of Shopify transformation project lens, but hopefully that's relevant to people on the call. And if it's not, insert other e-commerce platform where appropriate. But I think stepping back, the way that we look at a project is not through a product lens or a technical lens or a creative lens. Fundamentally, it's about coming at this as a business project, and it's got to have business and commercial drivers all over it. So candidly, we have best-in-class technical and creative capability, but if we get it wrong on the kind of business transformation angle, we create a lot of problems for ourselves further down the line. So we always begin with a really detailed discovery phase, and that involves typically workshopping across somewhere between 6 and 12 different work streams that touch upon all different areas of the business, from purely online considerations like UX or SEO, right the way through to back office operations, finance, logistics, etc. And the goal of that process really is that we discover everything that's relevant for the e-commerce transformation project. And it might be that there's not actually very much sitting there in the background. Some businesses have very lean, kind of flat systems, but often, particularly the sort of mature, established businesses that we're working with, there's really kind of deep insight that we need to glean from what systems are in place, what people are using those systems, and how are they using those systems. And actually, a bit like an architect does a lot of preparatory work before a single brick gets laid on a building, we need to know pretty early on, what is it that we are trying to deliver here? What is the end goal? What is the win for the customer? And then how do we work back from that? So it's highly collaborative, it's highly kind of investigative, but our experience is it just massively de-risks transformations, and it means that you get there on time, on budget, with a result that the customer's happy with.
Yeah. And when would you, so you're doing that discovery, when would you bring in, there's probably 3 questions here. When would you, if someone's transforming everything, so ERP, Shopify, and everything in between, would you recommend that we as a NetSuite consultative practice do that discovery together, or at least within the same period of time, to make sure that everything's aligned, or would you see those as separate projects?
I think it's driven by the business again. So if the client is looking at transforming in a kind of wholesale sense, they're trying to transform everything, and everything is up for grabs, or they don't have necessarily all the systems in place that they need, I think discovery could be tailored such that we're analyzing what is the order of priority here, what would we want to put in place, and for many customers that is ERP first, and get that right, and then you overlay the commerce layer. Very practically, I mean, again, it's up to the customer really, but when we are running those sort of ERP and systems integration workshops in discovery to inform what we're building on Shopify and how we're going to integrate with the back office, it's very, very useful to have both internal and advisory stakeholders on those calls. So yes, we would have full stack engineers at Swanky with deep expertise of integrating NetSuite and Shopify. But if there's an ERP partner or if there's an in-house ERP team, they absolutely need to be involved in those workshops, because it's, as we know, retail and commerce generally are quite kind of multidisciplinary, and you need to get the right people in the room.
Yeah.
Because ultimately there's capabilities of systems on both sides, and you need the system experts on each side of the conversation, and the customer's kind of sat in the middle saying I want this, and this is how I would like it to work. So you kind of need the experts on both sides to steer that conversation, but manage it within the framework of the each system's capabilities, I guess.
Yeah, but we all know it's pretty common not to do that, right? So I mean, we can't mention any names, but Stephen, you had a call with a potential customer who implemented NetSuite and now wanted to put another website who we can't mention on top of, and talk to us about the challenges that company is having.
Yeah. So they went ahead and bought another web platform completely. Are we allowed to say names, Rob, on this or not? WooCommerce. So yeah, they went and bought that basically and said, well, how do we connect it to NetSuite now? Because we've got this connector, but for some reason this isn't working and that isn't working, and you did some really cool pricing specifics for us on NetSuite, and why isn't that hooking up to WooCommerce? And so because there was no Dan on the other side of the fence, and Dan and Dan's team, that there was none of those conversations that kind of needed to happen to make sure actually is WooCommerce even the right fit? Has it got the capabilities to be able to manage that functionality on the web front end, let alone to be able to then integrate it smoothly within NetSuite? So now they're firefighting, probably spent a whole load of money. There's conversations and customizations that will need to be happened to, if we can even make it work. But had all that happened straight away, all of that just wouldn't have been an issue from the offset.
Yeah. Do you see that much, Dan? Do you see that? Do you go into these sort of firefighting situations where people haven't engaged with you previously?
Yes, I mean, there's lots of issues that arise. I think that's a really good example, Stephen, where candidly, and I do think this is often appropriate, candidly, ERP should be done first and should drive because if you're implementing ERP properly, it's delivering business logic and business value. But you're absolutely right. You need to do, in that instance, probably some platform discovery around which commerce platform is best going to integrate with NetSuite, and how do we do that, and what compromises are we going to have to make along the way or not. I think also you get into a lot of very kind of, again, quite commercial conversations. So, and we'll talk about this later, I know, but for example, if you're using NetSuite and you've got your product data set up in a certain way or your product structured in a certain way, are you wedded to that when you come to evaluating commerce platforms, or are you open-minded to iterating upon and improving perhaps your ERP setup? And so that's a really dynamic question. For some businesses, it's like, no, ERP is sacrosanct, it's sacred, and commerce has to just fit around it, and we'll do what we can. Other times, actually, there's a much more flexible approach, maybe because there's internal capability or there's a good partner on the ERP side. So I think the main thing, it's like anything in life, isn't it? And I go back to the kind of construction analogy. If you've got loads of stakeholders in and around your construction site and they're not talking to each other and they're not aligned on what success looks like, it's just going to get really messy really quickly.
Yeah. And in terms of NetSuite, then, what are the typical challenges that you see around NetSuite?
Yeah, there's two or three, and I can share a few recent examples. We've supported a very mature, very large kind of omnichannel customer recently who, again, NetSuite is their kind of source of truth and underpins their business. And they've moved to Shopify from another kind of enterprise SaaS solution. Very, very happy with the outcome. But some of the biggest challenges on the project were really understanding this is a business that has some subscription offerings for its customers. So it's kind of CPG, subscription first. And actually things around pricing and bundling and rounding of pricing and data in and out of NetSuite and making sure that that's accurately reconciling. It's a really small point in some ways, but it had a really material impact on the business requirements from an operational perspective. That took an awful lot of work, and again was something that probably none of us quite realized at the beginning was going to become such a material part of the project. So again, I think that comes back to, and we did the discovery in that instance, and it did mitigate a lot of that risk, but comes back to that point around getting all of the right people in the room, and whether that's finance, whether that's logistics, warehousing, really understanding how everything is going to be used and how the data is going to be pushed and pulled in and out of the core systems. So that's a good example from a recent one. We shouldn't speak ill of anybody, but we've also got a few customers at the moment who are big NetSuite advocates and love the ERP, but want to upgrade on WooCommerce, which is NetSuite's commerce platform. And again, there's lots of nuance in and around that, but there's a great opportunity for them to put Shopify in and deliver maybe a more performant commerce experience. Yeah. But there's loads of considerations around the idiosyncrasies of NetSuite and WooCommerce, which naturally are well integrated because they are at the same stack effectively. If you're moving to a more flexible, capable, creative context for commerce, so Shopify, how do you want to structure your products? If you've got B2B and you've got lots of custom and complex pricing lists and customer accounts, there's quite a lot to think about in terms of, again, your future state, how much you want to re-engineer and how much you don't. And we've got two projects in studio at the moment, both WooCommerce migrations. They're taking completely different approaches to that kind of product hierarchy based upon their requirements, budgets, timetables, etc.
Interesting. And then, so final question for me then. So, Dan, in your experience then, when you when you really integrate Shopify and ERP and do everything what we've talked about just then, what can it really unlock in terms of omnichannel for a business?
So I think I'll talk first about just the kind of efficiencies that we see, and just perhaps affirming those on the call that have spreadsheets everywhere in this business, because I think this is very common across e-commerce. And then secondly, a bit about some of the omnichannel and retail specifically things that we're doing. So I think first of all, most of our customers, and let's be honest, most of our businesses operate to some extent on spreadsheets. And that's very common, that's very normal. I don't think anyone should be ashamed of identifying that. And sometimes that's appropriate. But we've seen really large, mature, international, multi-channel retailers who are having kind of daily spreadsheets flowing back and forth around returns or fulfillment or warehouse levels and stock, which is just not necessary. If you set up a really good stack with Shopify serving your commerce layer, NetSuite properly implemented, and a good iPaaS with the right data flowing in and out, you can automate all of that, and you're removing risk. You're getting real-time visibility, stability. You're not wed to having certain excellent long-standing employees that know the spreadsheet that nobody else can touch when they're on holiday. So from a kind of automation and a business risk and an efficiency perspective, it's just worth saying that lots is possible. And I think a lot of retailers that we work with are surprised by how much we can do and how quickly. So sometimes it's just showing the art of the possible that's really powerful.
Nice.
I think more broadly on retail, and I'm conscious of time, so I'll just say one more thing and then hand back to you. But quite a bit of our work at the moment is true omnichannel. So it's businesses, they're not brands, they're not retailers, they are businesses that are selling direct to consumer online. They are selling direct to consumer in store. The combination of the two, and endless aisle, and buy online, collect in store, or buy online, return in store. And they've also got a trade or a B2B functionality. And a few years ago, you would have been looking at a very, very large implementation and an enormous cost to make this possible. Whereas I think with Shopify and with NetSuite and a really clear vision and strong leadership, some of the transformation projects that we're unlocking, which also include point of sale and the payments experience, we're going live in 9 months or 12 months with this kind of end-to-end transformation. So Shopify's powering a lot of that, but also so is NetSuite, and that good migration and integration opportunity to build a good systems architecture with everything in between as well.
Yeah. Stephen, you got anything to add to that? Or?
No, I think you'll see that message resonating throughout some of our stories later in this. Like I said, the amount where you've got the true omni-channel side pulling together so many disparate systems in different locations and different technology stacks and bringing all of that into one holistic view is transformational for the business. And we've got some really good stories to tell on that.
So thanks, Dan, for that. You mentioned there, Dan, about iPaaS and how important a good, stable, scalable iPaaS is to have, linking NetSuite, Shopify, and various other channels as well. And we're going to share with you now some real life three stories that have come from our customers. But before we do, we just wanted to introduce you to iPaaS that we choose to implement. Excuse me. Which is Celigo, which is NetSuite's #1 SDN partner. We've been a partner of Celigo now for 7 years, and we do our due diligence every year with other iPaaSes that are in the market, and Celigo always comes out on top in terms of scalability and, most importantly, stability. It has a number of pre-canned integration apps to Shopify, obviously, and many other marketplaces that are really easy to plug in to Celigo, which automates basically the process between Celigo and NetSuite. And all of a sudden, when you start to talk about scalability into different markets, again, we'll talk about a couple in a second, you can be a really agile company and make quick decisions with something like Celigo and get those plugged in very, very quickly. That's the overview. Stephen, if you want to go into a bit more of the technical point of view, just for a couple of minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, certainly. So think of kind of Celigo as a conduit into NetSuite, if you will. So Celigo will connect to pretty much anything, whether it's social and search channels, storefronts, your point of sale, multiple systems are supported out the box by pre-canned connectors, where it's just a configuration exercise rather than building the integration from the ground up. You know, we've got digital storefronts, obviously Shopify being one of the most popular ones we come up to on a day-to-day basis. It also connects to all the marketplaces as well, Amazon, eBay, TikTok Shop, etc. And you can see that this just gives you a high-level view of some of the stuff it does. And it's a full range of integration across all of those. So it's not just passing orders, for example, from Shopify. You know, it's syncing the stock levels between the two systems. It's handling the returns. It's handling the customer push. And as orders are updated and fulfilled from warehouses, etc., that's being pushed back into Shopify and handling the fulfillment flow as well. So it's complete end-to-end integrations. There's also integrations as well to aid with payment processes and the reconciliations. And this is where we see our customers see massive gains, because one of our customers had like 16 people where all they did every day was handle the payment reconciliations of Amazon. We hooked them up with Celigo to Amazon. We got the Amazon connector for the payment reconciliation. And now they load one file once a day in the morning and the whole process is automated. That kind of change is truly transformational, and that, you know, you can run leaner or you can repurpose people to work more efficiently in other areas. It just frees up a hell of a lot of time.
I think that's a key point there, Stephen, about running lean. And Dan, I'm sure you'll agree that you know, these retail companies that are 10, 20 million and looking to grow, whether that be into new markets or new regions, when we discuss with people about how are you going to grow, they panic that they need this integration stack, or they need a technology stack, but they need to add an IT department. You know, these might be 6 people, 10 people company, and they need to add an IT department. I think if you utilize a Swanky, if you utilize a Catalyst and a Celigo, the need for an IT department deteriorates, okay, because the technology that's in place will do the job for you. And if anyone on the call today would like a demonstration of Celigo with Stephen after the call, he can show you how easy it is to monitor the system and errors in the system. If something doesn't match up price wise, it's really easy to change, and you don't need that technical experience to run the system at all. So yeah, if you want to grow, this is something that you definitely need to look into.
And can I jump in, Rob? And just, I thought Stephen expressed that really respectfully, because the reality of digital transformation is that often people's jobs change. And a successful transformation, like the example you've given with 16 people processing data, presumably there are not 16 people after the transformation doing that, Stephen. As you say, they're in other roles, or the business is able to make cost savings. And I think, particularly if we think about retail, there is an element of challenge and pressure in the market, and our clients do want to do more with less. But one of my observations is that when we use iPass, particularly for internal engineering teams, they're often quite excited because they get to reskill and upskill and retrain on something which is new, and suddenly they've got the ability to automate, and they can build all these fantastic data flows, and they can actually start, as an engineer, connecting up systems in the business that they couldn't before. And that's actually not only transformational for the business, but actually makes people's jobs better, because they're actually adding value and they're doing really valuable things, rather than just every day I pull this spreadsheet and I send it to Jean, and then Jean does something with it and sends it to Joe. And so transformation can be a bit of a kind of buzzword, but it can be really good for the people on the ground and the engineers as well, who get to use better tech. Yeah,
definitely. No, good point. Okay, so I'm just going to share with you now some companies that we've worked with, and the challenges that they had, what they implemented, and the outcome they saw. So the first one we'd like to share with you is Varley, which is a ladies' clothing brand based in the UK and US, and they came to us a few years ago. The main reason was that they use a US-based ERP system, and when it crashed, the UK people actually couldn't log on or invoice or do anything. So they had a big lack of collaboration from the 3PL partners, huge major operational issues with returns, with refunds, with mis-selling and not knowing where the clothing was. and really poor communication between the business vendors. So they came to us to discuss NetSuite and discuss Celigo. And Stephen, do you want to talk about the tech stack that we put in place for them?
Yeah. So, well, they come to the table with quite a broad tech stack, and you'll see this a lot across our examples. So obviously, NetSuite being front and center as the ERP. They're using Shopify point of sale in 12 sites across the UK and the US. They've got 4 different third-party warehouses in different geographical regions as well, all using their own different warehousing systems. So, integrating and talking to those was complex. 3 individual Shopify sites, new order, EDI, and different payment methods such as Klarna and PayPal as well. So quite a broad tech stack for Varley.
Brilliant. Dan, just a quick question. Is there any specific challenges or unique challenges when you're implementing a UK and US Shopify site or multi-country Shopify sites?
Yeah, and again, actually, I talked about discovery earlier, but understanding international is a really important thing in terms of the way that you structure Shopify in particular. There are lots of solutions. Shopify is really investing in kind of native international solutions in the form of Shopify markets, but many of our customers would have separate sites in this way. And then you've got questions, absolutely, this is very, very common around, is the systems architecture on the back end the same or is it different? I think localization is one thing. So sometimes customers will choose to have separate Shopify storefronts to localize effectively into different markets. But more commonly, it is driven by that fragmentation in terms of the back end, local teams, different systems, different currencies. In terms of problems, the main challenge you get, candidly, is if you're effectively one brand, but you're maintaining multiple storefronts. And so you've got quite profound questions, which we answer in various ways at Swanky, but you've got quite profound questions like, is this one website managed centrally, but kind of effectively fragmented for 3 different markets? Or actually, have you got 3 different teams, marketing and merchandising and running product separately? And how do you govern that? And how do you govern that from a technical perspective, but also how do you govern it from a people perspective? So, but I think the answer is, a stack like this is very, very flexible and versatile, and Shopify is really well suited to it.
Yeah, and it's those early conversations with the likes of Swanky that, where's the stock coming from these 3 different websites? Are the item masters, is it one single item master that's being shared across all the 3 sites, or does each individual site have their own unique SKU? So, having those conversations early on to make sure that the tech stack is aligned and that processes flow seamlessly is absolutely valuable.
Yeah.
I think the other thing we'd say, Rob, is when we're doing one of these transformations, we would quite commonly not do everything at once, again, which is a bit of a recurring theme. So you don't want to do e-commerce and ERP at the same time if you can help it. Similarly, we would normally build a systems architecture with a Shopify front end for, let's say, the UK market. We'd launch it, we'd test it, we'd validate it. And then we've got various ways, we've got some cool proprietary tech, which enables us to effectively run multiple code bases for different front ends. But you would always start with the kind of best-in-class experience that the customer's looking to develop, and then you would replicate it into the different markets. So you'd very much typically take more of a kind of waterfall approach to those go-lives.
Agreed. Okay, great. And you can all see there the outcome that Varley are now seeing. I think they're 2.5 years into using NetSuite and Celigo. The big thing is one single data source. Finance have instant visibility of revenue, and their back-end operational challenges have completely eradicated. And they are, as a business now, really pushing forward into new markets and growing rapidly.
And also, Rob, on that one, a massive thing for Varley. Sorry, apologies, Rob, just jumping in there. Going back on the previous slide was there just speed to get an order out the door. So now, because of real-time integration, an order can be passed from Shopify to NetSuite, picked up straight away, passed to their warehouse pretty much instantly as well. So it's being picked, packed, and shipped. So the whole customer experience now has been massively improved just by the shortened journey from order to the thing arriving through the front door. And the impact that finance have had as well about having real-time visibility of revenue and it was massive. They used to have to pull together spreadsheets from about 17 people in the business and try and work out like, how much have we actually made. It was a weekly task to be able to get a number. Now you click a button and it's real time. That can't be underestimated.
Yeah, and that's huge value as well to the customer, right? Because I was on Amazon last night trying to find some football boots, and I needed them today, and I only bought the ones that were coming today. So speed is vital in this day and age, isn't it? That everyone wants everything yesterday. So that's really important.
We had a customer, Rob. Sorry to jump in, but it triggered me. We had a customer, 50-something million pound business, where they were using NetSuite. They're a good NetSuite customer, but somebody on one end of the warehouse would have to go in, find orders, would print them off, and would physically walk them across the warehouse to where the team would be packing and picking. And again, that was all automated as part of the Shopify migration project. And it's just a great example where like businesses, every business is built on systems because we're human beings. We systematize stuff, but it's amazing what you can unlock when you actually look at it properly with the experts in the room.
Yeah. What time are we on? So we're just going to do one more. We've got two more, but we'll just do this last one. This is a really interesting one. This is Crep Protect, the footwear. You've probably all seen them in Foot Locker and JD Sports. Really, really big brand. But when we went into to speak to them, they were how do we put this nicely? A bit of a mess, a bit of an operational mess, shall we say. Brilliant company to work with, though, and Warren Ferguson, the e-commerce guy there, is an amazing guy. But they were in, I think, 37 countries. They had 37 versions of QuickBooks, spreadsheets galore, Dan, and no visibility whatsoever of what was going on. And they needed. I think they were turning over something like 20 million at the time. They're now over 100 million. But they needed that system for scalable and standardized architecture. They've got mountains of ideas of how to grow the company. So they really needed something that was agile, flexible, and stable. So a NetSuite and a Celigo. And they're using Shopify. And I believe that you've worked with Crep Dan before as well. So it was a really interesting discovery phase, Stephen, wasn't it? And then what we've put in and what we continue to work with Crep, but they're really starting to see the benefits of a tech stack that we've put in. I don't know if you want to briefly touch on that, Stephen.
Yeah, so as Rob said, a lot of their complexities were just the sheer amount of locations they're in and the sheer amount of actual companies they are as well. So that whole, managing of multiple legal trading entities and the intercompany trading that's required, but having that one overall view of all those businesses and the interaction that they have, and being able to manage stock accurately across all those locations as well. Huge decisions need to be made on when to order stock and who from and at what price. And if your inventory data is wrong or out of sync, then you're making really important decisions on pretty bad data that can end up costing you a hell of a lot of money. They also had loads of complexities around kind of their pan-EU tax handling. So, wherever stock was being held, they need to be registered for VAT. So they couldn't see the VAT liability at any given point. That massively changed the amount of what's sat in their books. So instantly now with what we've put in place, again, they can click a button and they can see their true VAT liability at any point in time. Where again, that used to be a 10-day task. When they asked finance, what's my VAT liability in all the regions we trade in? That used to be a 10-day task. That's now a click of a button.
And that's massively saved them on people, right? So these aren't a small company, and they were running lean as it was. I don't think they've employed anyone since NetSuite and Celigo have been implemented. But like you say, the speed of data they're getting now enables them not to have to employ anybody and run lean and still grow. Is that right?
Yeah. Like I said, the teams pretty much remain static, but their profitability and the bottom line is just they're huge now. They were big anyway, but they're massive now, and that's thanks.
And only getting bigger as well.
Yeah. And I'd like to think that's thanks to obviously NetSuite, Shopify, and us and the parties involved.
100%. We'll just quickly touch on this one, actually, just very quickly. So Graham and Brown, are the wallpaper paint company. The challenge that they had was really the integration points. They had massive amounts of integration points, ensuring consistent data flow. They had a very archaic AX system which they needed to upgrade. So it was a time for them to look at a more modern system. But the tech stack, Stephen, if you can talk it through here, was massive. In the if we go back to discovery, the discovery that we had to do prior to going into the implementation. I mean, just talk to us about that, Stephen.
Yeah. So, our discovery normally takes place over a couple of days, say, where we understand the business, we document everything and make sure we're all aligned and work out how NetSuite's going to be configured in an optimal way. Because of the sheer complexity of the tech stack that you can see here, it took weeks and months basically to make sure we understood everything to the nth degree. As Rob said, their existing system was an absolute shocker. It would constantly go down. There was no error handling. So when an integration stopped working, they stopped trading. And if the tech person who knew that bit of the system wasn't in, they'd have to down tools until he came back off his holidays or whatever to figure out what the error was to pick stuff back up again, so the sausage machine could keep working. With Celigo, that's not a problem. If there's an error for one reason on one order, everything else keeps processing seamlessly, and that just gets put in a queue, and then it automatically retries. You fix the error, and then it just goes through. So nothing slows down. Business does not stop. And that was, that's huge for those, and having that single view of all their integrations and all their locations and everywhere that they're trading and what they're connecting to, whether it's a physical store or not, a retail, a web store, is game changing for them. And obviously NetSuite being as quick as it is, AX was so slow, so prone to failure. Again, just transformational for the business.
I think it's still quite a common, what you've just shared is quite a common challenge still in a lot of businesses that have grown quickly or have done things like grown through M&A. So they've bought in other businesses or other units, and suddenly they've got this kind of disparate stack. And I think one of our observations is that when you've got that kind of real-time visibility, your ability to manage stock is transformed. Because if you're selling as Graham and Brown are in direct to consumer, there's a whole trade element to this as well. And then you've got potentially, I mean, the beauty of marketplaces is with an iPass, you can just connect another marketplace if you want to. But if you're football boot analogy, Rob, if you've got one pair of Nike boots on the shelf and it's theoretically a product that can be purchased through, let's say, 6 or 8 channels, if you've not got real-time visibility and stock control, you've got an absolute mess waiting to happen, haven't you? And so I think, some of the customers we've worked with have done things like, you walk through the warehouse and you've got one product range, but it's almost like segmented. There's like one version or, multiple units for each of the channels that they're selling to, because they haven't got that unified view of, what inventory are we holding and what orders have been placed and how is it moving. So it's partly automation, but it's also like from a commercial perspective, you can sell more and you can sell more reliably.
Yeah.
And then you're going to reduce friction with customers that think they've bought the boots they want and then they haven't.
Yeah. If you keep customers happy, you keep growing. Perfect. Okay, so I think that's so. Guys, I'm just going to put you on the spot here. So if you could give one piece of advice to the guys on the call today, when changing the tech stack or going through a digital transformation, what one piece of advice should they take away from this webinar? Stephen, do you want to go first?
Thanks for putting the spot, Rob. Yeah, I would say understanding is absolutely everything, and I put understanding and communication, because it's all well and good one side of the business or whatever knowing what they need to be doing and what's important for the business to work in that way, but communicating with the other side of the fence as well is absolutely critical. Going back to Dan's analogy of architecture and house building, if you don't get the foundations right, the house is going to come crumbling down. So that's so important.
Yeah. I'd say similar, but maybe phrase it differently. I'd probably say more haste, less speed. Just slow down. At the beginning of a project, it's so tempting, whether you're you've got Shopify developers waiting to start writing code. You've got an ERP team ready to start building the architecture. I'd say slow down, because you're just going to save a lot of time and money overall. And I think particularly if you've got a platform license that's expiring, or you've got a burning platform, or you've got a tight deadline, it's very human and very natural to want to just leap into action. But it's even more important that you slow down. To Stephen's point, you get the plans right, and then you can always, double shift it if you need to later on and accelerate. And so some of our fastest implementations have involved the most robust and thorough discovery. And then you're absolutely clear what you're building, and you can go 2 or 3 times faster sometimes.
Yeah. I think you bring people along with you then for the ride, like internally, because change management in an ERP system is always very difficult. But if all the correct stakeholders are bought in and their teams are bought in during that discovery process, then change management that further down the line becomes a lot easier. I mean, we've seen many projects where the CEO or MD have just basically gone, right, that's what we're doing, do it now, and then it fails. So yeah, fully on board with you. We've got 2 questions. Dan, one for you from Paul. Why do you only use Shopify? Why not something else? Is it something that's that you decided on fairly early in your journey, or what's the reason for that?
Yeah, partly the latter. So we were a very early Shopify partner. We built some of the first kind of Shopify Plus stores in the UK. We were the first Shopify Plus partner in the UK in 2016. So yeah, partly our business has been built on having that deep Shopify expertise. And of course, Shopify has grown very, very quickly. But also, a little bit like you identified, Rob, with your iPaaS choices, you have to do diligence and you have to understand where the market's going. We've done over 100 Shopify Plus projects. We have never had a customer move from Shopify to another platform. We've moved, I think it's over 40 now. 40 customers have moved from Magento or Adobe Commerce. We've moved people from WooCommerce, from BigCommerce, from SweetCommerce, all the commerces, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, custom stacks galore. And our consistent experience is that Shopify is just better, faster, cheaper, and our customers love it and get great results out of it. So look, if and when there is an alternative which is going to deliver value for our customers, we'll definitely do it. But until that time, we're just all in on Shopify.
Yeah, same with us with NetSuite and Celigo, to be fair. So yeah, it's a good answer. And then Stephen, one question from Maria: is there any limitations with Celigo at all? So that apparently they're using another iPaaS. They're actually a NetSuite customer by the looks of it.
Right.
Is there any limitations where if you're doing sort of part refunds, for example, their iPaaS apparently doesn't handle that with NetSuite? Is there any limitations with Celigo there?
Not really. I mean, we showed some of the many pre-canned connectors, if you will, that will come with loads of flows of their own. But if that flow isn't supported that you need, again, we need to understand what you're trying to achieve. What is the business requirement? We will then spec that out, and you can build that as a custom flow in Celigo. So any unique need that isn't supported by an out-the-box connector can be built using custom logic. And so far, we've been doing this a long old time. We haven't found any that we can't tackle. And the aim is, it's the old 80-20 rule: get kind of 80% of it automated, and you deal by exceptions. And we just need to understand what those exceptions are, and we can work with Celigo to make that happen.
Brilliant. Okay, I think that brings us to a conclusion. Thanks, Stephen, for your time. Thanks, Dan. It's been great working with you on this webinar. I'm sure we'll work together on many more transformational projects. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. I hope you've taken a little bit of knowledge away from this. If any of you want to speak to myself, Stephen, or Dan, please feel free to contact us. But in the meantime, have a lovely rest of the day and the rest of the week. Take care.